as draws go, they don't get much better than this. Declan Brennan against Neil Raybone. Again, joined on comms by Mark Shepherd. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, we've been treated to some great stuff already today. This looks like a cracking match, doesn't it? Again, I feel this is turning into a bit of a cliche to say this could have been the final, but
yeah,
half the matches we've had in the last couple of days could have been quarterfinals or the semis. Two very good attacking players.
Both of these will be hungry. Both will feel that you know, this is. Well, I mean, there's still great players in the draw, but you know, this will be a huge game for them both. It's going to obviously stick them into the quarterfinals. I think the winner of this will play the winner of Jake Dillon Newlove and Lack Badham,
who are playing on table 2 at the moment.
Yeah. Do you know Lack?
Yeah, he's been on the tour for quite a long time. I don't know if it's been continuously. I certainly feel like he's been around a long time, maybe with spells away. But he's kind of been there or thereabouts for all that time, but he's never one you expect to get to like a semi. But you're not surprised to see him quite deep in the area.
Yeah, I watched him last night. Very solid player. He was playing Carl Brown, and Kyle lives just across the water in Barrow-in-Furness, and he brought a group of his friends, and the friends, they'd all had a drink, and they were just getting a bit, not rowdy, but, and Lack just took it in a stride. No problem at all.
Yeah, he's a very sort of steady guy and a steady player, doesn't get fazed by much. He's been playing internationally. I think he's played for India in a few World Championships, so
really?
He's had some team experience. A pretty good break this from Neil. Obviously feels that the red goes through the gap of these two yellows, probably off the right hand of the yellows.
I suppose of the two players, Neil, more experienced, been around the scene a little bit longer, probably, you know, got a few more trophies in his cabinet than Declan, but Declan really did hit the scene. You know, people kind of were waiting for him to make his mark, and then of course he won that Supreme Series event, which kind of put him on the map, and yeah, the Irish have been hailing him as the next great thing, and then suddenly kind of proved himself with that. It was, and you could almost see him growing confidence with that result, just knowing that, yeah, I can do it. I can beat this kind of field.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see that many players come on the scene with any more hype than that. Like, he's been really talked up for a long time, and rightly so, obviously. I mean, no one had any doubt even before he won that event, but Neil, by contrast, has probably won a lot more stuff, but people talk a bit less about
it. Yeah. I think the thing for Declan is it was kind of that Ronan McCarthy link. Ronan took him under his wing, and he's kind of been his mentor and almost his coach for a while. They've been practice partners, and Ronan had been extolling his virtues for quite some time. I remember commentating with Ronan quite some time ago during the Supreme Series, and he said, "This guy is top drawer. He's going to be one of the big ones." And you know, he's still a young man, and you know, who's to say he won't win multiple world titles? I just wonder whether the days have gone where you're going to see people like Mick Hill winning kind of 6 titles. It just seems like the whole levels just come up a little bit. The fields are much more open, aren't they? How often are we going to see repeat winners?
Well, definitely. I mean, even this event, it used to be these tour events, you could probably pick from maybe 6 players were really likely to win it, and everybody else was kind of making up the numbers to the latter stages. Whereas if you look at the draw for today, I mean, it's pretty hard to pick a winner. Several matches we've seen in the earlier rounds have been world champion against world champion. So first look at Declan's break, and he's gone for the slightly more controlled option.
Yeah, very measured.
Very measured, but very good. Look
Very
at these
effective,
yellows.
yeah, look. Wide open.
when you just watch your opponent clear from the break, the best way to get back on level terms is to do the same.
Of course, Neil's already played on this table. Declan hasn't, so I think that'll play any part in this. I know all of the tables are the same, but the arena table always just seems to play that slight bit differently. Probably it's got the extra lights around it. It's probably just a little bit warmer.
Yeah, I mean, it tends to play quicker, which I think it suits you if you're playing well for most people. Like sometimes if you're not playing well, you can look a bit silly. You can lose the cue ball on an already fast cloth, heated up even more by the lights. And it's, as we were saying earlier, it's a pretty hot day in here, so
yeah,
conditions are already pretty fast. I think the thing that won't faze Declan too much is the fact that this is being streamed. Like some players you see on the stream tables that maybe it's their first time or maybe it's quite rare and they're thinking, oh, this will be nice. My friends and family at home don't get to see me play very often.
Yeah.
I think he's well past that point.
Yeah.
He's got nicely on what's probably the most difficult ball, yellow on the left-hand side. Hard to imagine any problems from here.
I really like the way Declan plays. He's just got a nice cadence. He's not super quick, but he's fast enough. He's not doesn't mess around if they're there. Just takes them out, and his cue action is really nice. It's very smooth. He's got a lovely pause on his backswing. It just stops there for that split second, just to give him the control he needs.
Yeah, for most people, the key is playing at a kind of consistent pace. Like what you don't really want to be doing is rushing some shots and then slow on others. It just takes you in and out of your rhythm. It's just playing a similar speed for every shot.
So after that great break, they were all there, but we've still got to get them. And without any drama, he does, and he levels the score up at 1 apiece.
I must say, these tables have been breaking really well. I think the fact that they're new cloths, sometimes when you've played on them for a bit, just get slight indentations. It's very hard to rack the balls, but actually playing earlier, it was very easy to get them racked tight together. And looking around the room, you can see a lot of people getting good splits. Which is also meaning the players aren't having to hit them so hard. We've seen quite a few people opting to take a little bit of pace off, just control the white in the middle of the table. Well, he had actually parked the white in the middle of the table until it got hit, but going for a more powerful break. And ironically, not actually potted anything despite all that power.
It's not the worst leave. The yellows are okay. There's obviously the yellow and red tied up on the side rail, but I think the yellows would be the better ball because you can find a way to. I mean, you don't need much of a nudge. That is almost, you know, it's kind of set towards the bottom left pocket, so you don't need much of a nudge on it to promote that yellow. I think he's just looking now. He'll want to attack that ball very early. I think he'll be looking here to play the plant to middle and then try and leave an angle where he can screw down into that area.
Yeah, I mean, if you were feeling super aggressive, you could do it off this, just hit the plant straight and screw back.
Yeah.
You do risk getting stuck to that red and not leaving yourself a shot. Yeah, the goal there was just trying to leave that yellow near the pocket so he can screw off it another time. He's left it a bit nearer the jaw than he wanted.
Yes.
It's not going to be a difficult pot, but it's going to be difficult to get enough pace in, I think.
Yeah.
It looks like the red and the yellow are just tending towards the left jaw. If they were lined up as a plant, he could potentially plant the yellow over the middle onto them. I think it may just rattle in the pocket if he does that.
Yeah, maybe to play it dead weight and just let gravity take over and see what he has planned.
Yeah, I mean, that pocket has proved pretty generous. I mean, you assume they all play the same, but I can recall a couple of shots when we were watching last night where they fell in unexpectedly in that pocket.
I think also the camera's foreshortening. I think there might be a kind of inch between those two balls, so you might just be able to throw it across enough. There you can see maybe half an inch between the two. Or you can just try and move it.
Yeah, I think that's wise.
Yeah.
The plant would have had to be played slowly, which would risk tying up the ball you played onto it. So
Yeah.
better just to get it blasted out. That was a good shot, actually, to force that angle. You can't take liberties down the cushion like that. Playing at that pace, you've got to be dead on. Another positive shot. I think a lot of players, when they're quite a tight angle into the middle, get a bit tentative with them and just roll them in. He was happy to screw that in a bit faster.
It's got a little unwanted flick, but it's okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure he was pretty much straight on this yellow so he can draw it back for the last one.
We know that the black will pass below that red into the middle bank because we've just seen a ball potted on that line. Looks from here that the red's covering the potting angle, doesn't it? But it's...
Yes, you'd swear that didn't go.
Yeah.
See, from that angle it does go. He's able to play it off the
He
red.
stood up on that one really quickly. He's shaking his head. There's a smile on his face. He hated that. He jumped up on it straight away. He thought he was going to... He definitely didn't play to nudge the red. And that could have easily pushed the black towards the knuckle. In fact, it did, but it still found the pocket, but could have easily missed that.
Yeah, you can tell so much more from the player's body language than from actually watching the shot.
Yeah.
You can believe he might have deliberately played it like that, but his reaction showed he definitely didn't. Still, luckily for him, that red was near enough the pocket it was likely to guide the black in. So, a break of serve, as it were. Now 2-1 up, and his own break to come. So, Declan breaking with his playing cue, whereas we saw Neil Raybone's got the two cues there. Not sure I'm convinced by having a separate breaking cue for 8-ball.
I think it, for me, it comes down to a little bit about tip size as well, because if you play with a small tip, you play with like a 7.5 mil or something, you probably don't want to be breaking with it because it's just that little bit too thin. Could easily damage it, or it's just that little bit more difficult to find centre ball of the cue ball. Any kind of side is going to react that much more. So I kind of get it if you use a really small tip. I mean, if you're using a 9 mil tip, I don't think it makes that much difference. But
no, I think preserving your playing cue is probably the one thing that it does make sense. I'm not sure.
And I think Neil plays, if I remember rightly, I think Neil plays with a fairly small tip.
Yeah, we saw his break cue's got a carbon fibre ferrule. I'm not actually sure. I mean, that's become very popular in the last few years. I'm not actually sure it plays that differently. I've played American ball with carbon fibre ferrules, and I'm not sure it's hugely different actually in reality, but these things get popular and people go with them.
I always, whenever I'm looking on the American sites or watching the American, oh dear, he knew as soon as he hit it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of shot you could put down to a kick for half of that, but I think he's missed it by so much that I think he was missing it and maybe got a bad contact on top of.
Yeah, they often talk about deflection in 9-ball, but never really seems to be a thing. So they've got the carbon tips and the low deflection cues and so on and so forth. And I often wonder whether it's a real thing or whether it's, I mean, it's not something that we particularly worry about in English 8-ball.
No, I find it a bit mystifying as well. I mean, I think it's
Potentially the weight of the balls makes a difference. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's true that, I mean, Predator and the companies that have most to say about this, I think it is true their cues deflect less, and you see plenty of people testing it. But then you've also got to account for the throw when the ball's hit and the swerve as it's going down the table. So there's always 3 elements to it anyway.
Yeah.
It's only one of them that you take out.
Yeah.
It's almost become a mantra for American cues, the lowest deflection equals the best cue, but I think it's a characteristic.
Yeah.
Which, as you say, English pool and snooker players, you just never talk about it at all.
No.
I mean, I think probably because the tip's smaller and the ball's smaller, it does actually make less difference. The other interesting difference between the games is that American pool players nearly always have several cues, often with spare shafts, whereas most English pool players just play with one cue and quite often have it for a number of years.
And also the American game, the carbon fibre cue has become a thing where I've seen a couple of people use it in English 8-ball, but it's almost a novelty, isn't it? No one really, they've never seemed to take off.
No, and the ones that used to be around for 8-ball and snooker were just really poor quality in the early days. I think there are now a couple of custom ones on the market that do look like they could be almost good enough that I could see people trying. But it's very much like people copy what everybody else does. It's the way everyone plays with 3/4 length cues, which has never made much sense to me. Like I've got a cue that splits in the middle, which I just find easier because you can get it in the boot of the car. Everybody else is carrying these long cases around.
Yeah.
I think it was popularised. John Harris, who's a cue maker that a lot of the players use, does a good line in those 3/4 length cues that makes good quality ones. I think people just started copying that and everyone's done the same.
There is something about a well-made cue, isn't there? I don't know what it is, but it's, at the end of the day, they're a piece of wood. But I've held a couple, like Trevor White, for example. I've held one of his cues and it just feels lovely. It just feels lovely in the hand. It feels well balanced. It just has a reassuring feel to it. And Jason Owen's another great cue maker and the sponsor of the Open event. And again, just it feels nice in the hand. And some other cues just don't have that feel. And I don't know what it is.
No, it's a very intangible quality, and I think you can often test it even before you've played a shot. You sometimes just pick one up and you're like, oh yeah, that's going to play well. I mean, obviously everyone has preferences. Like some people like light ones, some people like heavy ones. That is just preference. But and that's been an interesting thing, watching more people start bringing breaking cues. There are 2 completely different schools of thought. Like some people have got very heavy breaking cues of 20 plus ounces, and some people are playing with 13, 14, and there doesn't seem to be any agreement on which of those 2 is the better.
It is very much one of those. Whatever works for you, isn't it? It's so subjective. It's probably no right way. It's whatever feels good in your hand, and ultimately, I always say that probably 70% of this game is played between the ears. It's such a psychological game. If your mood's not right, it doesn't matter how good you are. You just nothing will go right. So if you've got equipment that makes you feel good, then why not?
I think it's just enjoyment for a lot of people. I mean, most of us play it as a hobby, bit of fun. You want to try out new things, but like golfers like new clubs, tennis players like new rackets. It's all part of the fun of it.
One thing I noticed about Declan as well is I seem to remember that he not wear a glove for some time. It's become a thing for quite a few Scottish players now. They seem to have Liam Dunster uses one. I think Mark Boyle now uses one. There's quite a few of the Scottish players do, and I'm sure Declan was at one point. But I noticed he's not sporting it here, and you would think it is a hot day. It's a hot room. You would think if ever you're going to need one, it would be now.
Yeah, definitely, and it can often get quite humid in Blackpool, the hotel being right by the sea on a hot day. You can get some moisture in the room. Yeah, I could understand the glove thing. I'm not completely sold. I just find it a bit awkward. Like somehow it just sort of gets in the way a bit. But there are the only time I've ever used one is playing in Asia when I've been on holiday a couple of times to humid places like Vietnam, and it's very hard to play there without one because there's just so much moisture in the air. But I'm sure in the UK.
I get it in the 9-ball game because often you're running the cue between your fingers and it's the extra weight. You need to get action on the cue ball, so you get that sliding effect through the fingers. But I don't think it's quite so important because we don't need quite the same action in 8-ball as they use in 9-ball.
No, and I think that's one of the things that's been popular with the new carbon fibre ranges for 9-ball. They're pretty slippery. They don't really feel like you. Although I have seen people using a glove even with them, but it doesn't feel like you'd really need to. There's just nothing to grip on your hand.
Again, it just comes down to whatever makes you feel good. If it feels good in your hand, if it works for you, then you're a long way towards winning because it gives you that psychological start that you need.
For most people, there's also a bit of a sort of new novelty effect the first time you try a new piece of equipment. It gives you that extra bit of confidence. And I think it also distracts you from, you stop thinking about your cue action because you're thinking about your new cue, so you just naturally play the shot, whereas if you start dwelling on should you be pausing at the back, the front, you talk yourself out of it.
I think here Declan was playing for the gap to play the double that's nearest the cushion, but he's just come a little too high, so he's going to have to find something. Maybe the only shot he's got is possibly to double the other yellow. Is that even on?
I think you can pos
what
it.
reward does he get?
Yeah, where's the white going?
Yeah, exactly.
You're never going to leave a good shot. I suppose you're quite likely to. Well, you probably could manufacture a cannon into the red, but then you're just leaving a second double.
Yeah.
I mean, he's obviously not played for this position. You can see by how much thought he's now having to give it. He doesn't have the shot in mind.
Yeah, if he found the gap, he can double the yellow closest to the cushion and leave the cue ball there for the other yellow, but as I say, he just came too high for that. Oh, well,
Sure.
there's part of the job done. A little piece of magic.
It's also the confidence of a top player just to play it at that weight, which was the weight he needed to get the white around. You see club players thinking, well, I'm not likely to pot this, maybe I'll just cover the bag.
Yeah.
Of course, covering the bag's hopeless here because Neil's just going to clear up anyway,
Yeah.
but it's hard to talk yourself out of that sometimes.
That really was a fabulous shot. And he's gone for the treble. Oh, he's got it. This is going to be some clearance. If he can make this black, and the black's not easy either.
No, it's not a gimme after those two. But I guess it's probably the easiest of the three shots.
Yeah.
The first double was the one really.
Fabulous.
Double into the corner pocket is just never easy.
And the only way he could get on the other yellow was to hit that red full ball, which he did. Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? It really is amazing. I mean, that was definitely no gimme, but after the other two shots, you really expected him to get it. He'd done all the hard work. That really was a tough shot.
So frustrating as well to miss a ball like that.
Oh.
He's now got to watch his opponent clear up. The pressure he'd have put on Neil, if he'd have taken that clearance out from absolutely nowhere,
Yeah.
Neil would have been sitting in his chair thinking, oh, this is fine, I don't mind him going for either of these double. Although, that said, he has left the white in one of the more awkward places.
Yeah.
You fully expect Neil to clear up still, but
Yeah. I think for Neil, the double, the plant is pretty much unmissable. It's awkward, but for him, there's a good chance I'll miss it. For him,
yeah, I think the pos is unmissable. I guess he's slightly worried he doesn't want to shear off one side of it and knock the second ball safe.
Yeah.
Oh, he could get well around cushion first.
Yeah. Oh, this isn't ideal. Does this red pass the other one? It doesn't look like it. Well, no, definitely not.
I think that's pretty much where you've expected the white to end up. Because
Yeah,
playing
I know,
cushion
but
first, it was always going over that side.
Yeah.
I guess he was probably playing to get the white nearer the blue spot, thinking he was going to leave a choice of either top left or bottom left.
And awkward little plans, isn't it? Offset. It's horrible. Very difficult.
find it be particularly annoying to hand the table back, having watched his opponent miss the black.
Yeah.
Which is uncharacteristic at the best of times.
I think the plant's all he's got to go for, but well, obviously he's got a double if he wants it. Not dissimilar to the one that Declan took on.
Yeah, I've got to say, I think I'd prefer the double to
Yeah.
the plant. I mean, this plant is so much distance.
It's horrible. Horrible. You just have to pick your line and commit to it. But so much, as you say, so much distance between the balls, it makes it really low tariff.
There's no real shot to nothing element on any of these balls. He's going to leave the black if he misses. Digging down as well, this doesn't make it any easier.
Oh, is there? I thought for a second he fluked it.
Well, I have to say, even for a player of Neil's quality, digging down that plant at distance,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'd have been, if I was playing it, I'd have been rolling it pretty much pocket weights, trying to give it the best chance. Well, that was all brought about by the previous choice of shot. It felt like maybe playing the plant.
Yeah.
I understand why he didn't, because I think he was worried he might knock the second one a bit safer, but he wasn't going to go that safe.
And he had a ball at the top of the table that he can recover position from. So for me it was the plant. But who am I to question his shot choice from here? It's far more experienced than I. But as you say, he obviously spotted something that he didn't like. But it did feel like the option.
I think he thought playing at cushion first he could swing the cue ball around 2 cushions after contact and was bound to end up in the middle of the table. The trouble is when you play off that many cushions, it can just take a bit of the pace out.
What a split this is. Ironically, it doesn't look like he's got an easy opener.
No, if the cue ball was in the middle of the table, he'd have choices galore, but actually from where it's finished, kind of tricky either way. There's a thin cut on both colours that he could take on, but he's going to be losing the cue ball somewhat. Got a choice of colour. He's spotted one of each off the break, so he can nominate and be sure of being on that colour.
Given the choice, I think he'd be going for yellows, but I think he's forced into going for reds.
Yeah, and that red above the black is not in an easy position to open up.
He's going for it now, by the look of it. Almost like kind of a half-hearted attempt, wasn't it? I thought he was going after the red that was tied up, but didn't really play it at a pace where he would have promoted it. And
no, I mean, I think he was just playing that thin and looking to play the sort of dead weight cannon onto the red and just knock it towards the side cushion.
Yeah.
I think he probably was playing the positive shot, but it ended up looking a bit nothing. Once he caught that yellow, he was nowhere near the cannon. You've got to think he was going for an attacking shot, because if he'd been minded to play a safety, he could have played it off the first shot of that clearance.
Perfect angle to attack this problem. I think ideally he'd hit the first yellow, maybe half ball, just to push through the gap, push the other one towards the pocket. But these are the kind of the ones that they're really hard to judge, and you are trusting to luck a little, aren't you?
Yeah, it's also going to be going through his head that the yellow's got tied up in the middle of the table now, so
maybe even full ball into the red, just to might. Oh, It's taking the yellow at the top of the table. Or is he?
Does this yellow pot?
Oh, yeah, I have to assume it does.
Yeah, that makes far more sense then.
Yeah, yeah.
He needed to get this one out of the way early doors.
Yeah. So, do you think he's going to try and break them open now, or do you think he'll just try and land on the plant?
I think he'll just play for the plant.
Yeah.
I don't really like the cannon, particularly from this angle. He hasn't really got enough angle to hit it hard, and if you just run slowly into it.
At least if you leave the plant, you're giving yourself a chance, whereas if you play the cannon, you're not guaranteed another open shot.
He's doing the right thing to play it first, even though it might feel like you could have taken the one in the middle previously, because there was a lot of chance of knocking the second ball safe, even if it had gone in.
The danger, though, of leaving the ball over the middle, that has left a big pocket for Neil for the one difficult ball that Neil has.
Yes, this may actually have turned out really badly.
Now where Neil would have had a couple of balls tied up, maybe that red and the black, he's really only got the black to contend with as a problem. Kind of surprised that he's not attacked from there, but I get it. I mean, but letting Declan's a dangerous player. Letting him back at the table with one up the rail, ball over the pocket. Okay, he's got a yellow tied up, but
well, given that you've still got the black tied up, you're not really putting him under any pressure. I mean, the downside to attacking there was it's just so easy to not get on the black, and then the frame's definitely away. But I would be a bit worried about letting Declan have too many more shots from this position. I was going to say, screwing back, that felt a fairly adventurous shot. He's missed a easier ball than that into that pocket already.
I think he felt it was worth the risk to try and get across table to leave himself the angle off of his penultimate ball to get into that black. It's cost him the shot.
The thing in favour of that, of course, was that the black is still tied up, so no immediate danger. Although,
but you know, Neil, having played that shot to put the red over the pocket, he's pretty much in the same position he was earlier. Okay, he's got a ball over the pocket that he can attack the black with. But
yeah, I think that's probably the big difference.
Yeah.
Maybe the shot after this, he'll look to play into the black.
But the problem is, I think, attacking the black from above, it does well. I mean, yeah, he can land on it actually, can't he? He must.
Well, he can either land on it, or
Yeah.
I guess if he plays off the right-hand side cushion into the black and knocks it away, I think
he's gonna leave the.
I'll just leave it and land on it now.
Of course, yeah. I was thinking it's fraught with danger trying to get it out, because the yellow's kind of, it's not set to a plant, but it could go side red and knock the other yellow in. So it makes much more sense to try and land on it.
Well, it's not that easy a shot to land on it. You've got to judge it.
Small margin of error, yeah.
It's one of those ones, if you're not perfectly on it, you're not really on it at all.
There's only a sort of a few inch window, but you expect him to get on it. It's perfect. Just a gentle shot and let the white drift down table. Wow. He's misjudged that by some margin.
Well, unless he thinks the black goes off the yellow, I can't believe he's...
No, I can't believe he's played that.
But again, you don't want to criticise Neil Raybone, because his shot choice is better than ours, but he's played two slightly surprising shots lately. I felt like if there was any danger of not being on this, you'd have been better playing it thin, the red into the middle. You could definitely borrow a bit of the pocket, and that made sure you'd hit the side cushion, which gave a bit more margin for error.
Yeah, needed that cue ball to be wider, and
I think you're always wise to hit the side cushion there. It just gives you a bit more space. You You've now got the problem that the white's flying around. You've got to make sure you don't knock the yellow in.
Yeah.
Well, it could be worse, but it's not. It's not going to turn out well for him.
No.
Well, a couple of interesting choices, let's say, in that frame. I mean, it's all about percentages, and other days it turns out well, but he could have done a couple of things different that in hindsight I'm sure he's wishing he did do different. Well, again, you don't want to criticise either player's shot choice, but I mean, obviously, in hindsight, it's turned out badly, so clearly that was the wrong shot. But if he'd have played it as intended and the yellow had covered the black, I'm still not sure he'd have been in a fantastic position, because there'd have been a one cushion escape to just kind of drop behind the black.
Behind it, yeah.
I just felt bumping that yellow in or over the bottom left-hand corner was just a more straightforward shot, really.
And this is not that difficult. I mean, it's a tricky double, don't get me wrong, but Neil will be very happy to have the opportunity. He's just... Where's that going? Yeah, that's going to be frame over, but just wonder whether black was going for a second, if it was going to get in the mix, but yeah. Okay, it worked out for Declan in the end, but a bit risky letting Neil have that double.
Yeah, I don't think he wanted to leave him the double at all.
I think, yeah, no, it's he obviously played to cover it and got it wrong, but you kind of think Neil's going to get that double maybe 3 out of 10 times, perhaps.
Yeah, and I mean there was always the risk. It was quite a delicate shot to leave the yellow bang in front of it. There was always a chance of leaving some kind of shot.
Yeah.
Now he's left himself a black that is missable. I don't expect for a minute him to miss it, but
played it with great confidence. Well, I mean, neither player really flowing. Two players that are more than capable of break dishing every frame, but just both getting kind of stuck in the moment. They both realise that they're up against a formidable opponent, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you put that down to, whether it's the situation, the quality of the opponent, or just they've played a lot of pool today, or just sometimes you get off to a slow start and one player drags the other one down.
Fatigue is sure to play a part in it as well, because you're in the last 16, but you don't really have that end in sight yet. It's not until you really get to the quarterfinals, semi-finals, the adrenaline starts pumping through you, and you know you've got a real chance to win, and it kind of bucks your ideas up again. This is kind of that time where if fatigue's gonna fall in, it's probably around about now.
Yes, in a way, it's a kind of important round, the last 16, but it's a bit nothing. There's quite a lot of matches going on, so you don't quite feel like you've reached the business end. Once it's the quarters, there's only 4, there's more people watching.
But look at this for a break. This is...
Yeah, this is like a practice position, isn't it? You put them all, well, a lot of them into the same pocket even.
He just took the balls out of the chute and just rolled them around the table. So give himself a bit of practice to warm up.
He's played a nice shot there. I mean, obviously it was a big margin for error, but he's landed nicely on the one to the right middle. Opens up the one to the left middle. I'm not sure Neil Raybone will quite be able to understand if he does go 5-1 down, which it looks like he's about to. I don't think he'll quite understand how that's happened, because he's been at the table a fair bit. He's had a number of decent opportunities. He's normally quite pragmatic about this kind of situation and does just take it in his stride, but he's going to be a bit frustrated nonetheless. don't think either of these players will have been delighted with this as a last 16 draw. I think, with no disrespect to the other players involved, of whom there are a number of very good ones, there were definitely easier draws they could both have had this round. It's not to mind his work here. I mean, they're a pretty simple finish that you could have put in a number of pockets, but still, it's the kind of position you could have messed up. He's kept good control of the white. Natural angle now. The white's just going to drift down the middle of the table to leave him nicely on the black. Very positive way of playing, even these kind of easy shots, which he was never going to miss, but you see some players quite tentatively just rolling them in, whereas he's potted everything firmly into the pocket and kept good control. And now is ahead by 5 frames to 1.
Yeah, and Declan, another player, we were talking yesterday about players who have the luxury of having their own pool table at home. He's got a table in his garage, so it doesn't have to go too far to get on the table. I think he doesn't mind putting in the table time. Again, the lockdown games that were happening, he played quite extensively in those. Any of the big competitions that they played, he was always featuring in them.
Yeah, it was a real bonus, as it turned out, the people that did have a table at home. I mean, a lot of players who were down the club every night would have said, well, I don't need a table at home, I'm down the club every night. But of course, it turned out that wasn't the way in 2020.
This is messy. It's just not really happening for Neil at the moment, whereas Declan, a second ago, we just saw him open them up and leave it perfect. This is gone dry and it's just clusters.
Yeah, this is exactly the kind of thing that happens to you when you're a few frames behind. Somehow if you're ahead, you break and all the balls are over the pocket, like Declan's last break, whereas he's hit a pretty similar break and they've all ended up clustered together.
Went straight after the one of the reds that's tied up and he's missed it, so... And there's just one day he's fairly straight. I mean, he's not got that many balls to be able to promote. He's got obviously 2 problem areas. The 3 balls on the left-hand side, the outside one of the 3 will pot into bottom right. So if he can get the right angle on that, he can punch into the pack and try and break that open. But he would have dearly loved to get the one out at the top of the table now, which is what he went after a second ago but missed.
Yeah, he'll be a bit annoyed to have missed that. It was quite a big target, but I think he was just trying to play a delicate cannon and keep position. So he had to take his medicine.
Yeah, just knocked out, knowing that Neil's situation is even worse than his. 4 balls tied up, 1 on the right side cushion as well. Not a nice leave.
No, this is a horrible position. Reassuringly, though, I think for Neil's supporters, he still looks quite focused. Like sometimes you see players who are 5-1 down and in a position like this just get down and play something quickly, but he's still giving it full attention. Quite sure what he had in mind there. It looked like he was going for the pot, but there didn't seem a lot of value in potting that ball.
I just wonder if he was trying to target the red he nudged into, just trying to push it across a little bit so it wasn't available down into the bottom right. I don't know if he was thinking that deeply, but if he, I mean, he may have already done enough just to take away that angle that Declan had. Looks like he can still go after it. He's got the angle on the one to the bottom right to go into them now.
Yeah, this is actually quite a good angle. You can get quite a firm hit on this. Well, that's not bad. I mean, obviously in a dream world you hope you knock all 3 out, but you're not really expecting to do that. You're just hoping to get at least a couple out and leave an angle to get the last one out later on.
It's becoming trickier though. He may be forced to double that red. Do you think that's on the side rail?
Yeah, it doesn't really. The one bottom left is obviously an easy pot, but he doesn't really want to pot that because
No.
then he's got no way of getting into the other one.
And then he's still got the stray ball in bulk, which really doesn't connect with anything.
No, I mean maybe he just has to take his medicine and cover this bag.
You called it.
I think that was the kind of shot he didn't really want to have to play, but
Yeah.
kind of knew deep down that was the right shot.
It's not in their nature, is it? They just want to get on and clear the frame. But you say it's still got that one awkward ball tied up on the left with nothing really obvious to use to get into it, and still that ball in bulk. And Neil obviously still with a horrible leave, so I think that's probably a better option for Declan.
Yeah, and now Neil's going to have to do something which is a bit unnatural, which is just to try and cluster the table up more. Ideally, he'd be wanted to get his balls out so he had a clearance, but the reds are too dangerous, so he's going to have to play defence for a bit. Not too much pressure on this shot because there's still a couple of clusters, but he's well aware that in a shot or two's time it's going to be different, so ideally wants to make something happen. That's a bad outcome though. If he's left the edge of this red, that was the thing he really didn't want to do. He was trying to make sure that Declan could only see the ball bottom left, but if he's left him access to the difficult one, he's going to be knocking this straight out. So all the reds in possible positions now, so Neil's got to tie one of them up with this shot.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he does here. I mean, there is the yellow to the right of the cue ball. Maybe double it back into that left-hand pocket, but it doesn't really. Yeah, that's a better shot. I was going to say maybe try and cover the angle, but he's done the same thing and just pushed the red a little safer, but just almost feel like he's just buying himself a bit of time. Declan still very much in the ascendancy in this frame.
Yeah, that's all Neil can really do at the minute, by time. Good thinking there. I think a lot of people would have been tempted to cover the top left-hand bag, but actually there's more value in getting the ball safe in the way he's done it. It's quite inaccessible to Declan.
Certainly given Declan something to think about.
Because none of the balls at the bottom of the table really link up to it. So it's not like there's a natural cannon. Declan also knows that this isn't exactly a free shot, because if he gives Neil another go from an openish position, he'll tie another one of the reds up. So ideally wants to try and make something happen here. He was hoping to get in behind that yellow. What he doesn't really want to leave is Neil, which he has done, is leave Neil at a shot at the ball to the bottom left-hand corner. He could potentially push a yellow near to that red. It's a kind of mix between attack and defence for Neil. I think he's probably figures he's bought himself enough time. Doesn't want to cluster the table up so much that he can't clear up given half a chance. So he's kind of hedging his bets a bit. It's always pretty useful having a ball. Well, they've both got one in quite favourable positions near the left-hand middle pocket. It's kind of a very versatile position that you can get into a lot of different positions around the table from there. So players like to have a ball in that kind of area. Oh, not going in. That's pretty good.
Just wonder, is he left Neil the double to try and get that yellow? Just wonder if he can just come below the black to get the yellow in over the pocket where the red is.
Yeah, I think he's got the line for the yellow. He's a bit close to it with the white. I don't know if he can just nip the white out of the way.
Yeah.
Just to screw it in. It's actually quite a big target. I'm not sure he's quite got the angle for it here.
Playing the treble instead, I think.
Oh, that's annoying.
Yeah.
He's looking at that thinking, there's no way I'm not hitting that red on the white path. At first glance, you could look at that and think that's a great shot. He's potted it clean, but that's the last thing he wanted to do. He wanted to bounce the red out of the way. He's got another double potentially. Much easier. Well, he's missed it, but it's a much easier shot to judge that one into the middle pocket.
No, usually very good at doubles, but ironically, it's a double that cost him the title in the Supreme Series when he playing a heel game at 9 each against Clint Jansen and missed a double into that same middle pocket. He won't appreciate me reminding him of that.
No, it's a pretty salty one, losing 9-all, isn't it? Or losing from 9-all. So Declan just tidying up, deciding to leave Neil at it. Figures that no point in him pushing the boat out too far. He'll let Neil move some of the balls first.
Doesn't need to be in a rush to attack it, does he? But you just feel that when is the right time to pull the trigger?
Yeah, what do you do if you're Neil? Do you mess it up a bit more? I mean, he could pop this ball over the middle or the one at the top and then just try and get either the red on the left side cushion even safer, or try and tie one of the other ones up. Or he could try and be a bit more positive. He's only really got one bad ball himself, which is the one bottom right. Still looks to be up for the job. He wouldn't know from his face that he was 5-1 down.
I do enjoy the occasional tactical battle. It's great seeing the break dishes, but just to try and get inside a player's mind and how he's thinking, and both of these players kind of look at this table and think, well, I can be extravagant and try to go for it, but when is the right time?
Well, I think he's got a plan for the yellow on the right-hand side cushion. There's no point potting that if he wasn't going to do something positive next.
Yeah.
Possibility of a cocked hat double. Possibility of doubling the yellow into the left middle above the red. Oh, no, I don't think that's on, is it? Yeah, maybe have to be the cocked hat double.
I think that's what he's looking for. He's looking for the cocked hat. Well, if he makes it, it could be the frame for him.
It didn't feel like it was quite a natural angle, that. It was quite a mean, they're always quite hard to pick out, but sometimes you look at one and think, actually, that's always going close. That one just didn't look like it was quite right.
And actually, nearly cost him. I mean, he's got a kiss on that yellow, and it's come out okay. But if he allowed Declan a sight at that red, which it looked like he would just for a split second, then he's got an easy plant down the rail, and it's a very simple finish. But he didn't, and Declan's still got that problem. And again, it's still the question of when do you pull the trigger, because that I don't know what you do. I just genuinely don't know what you do with that red.
No, it's pretty difficult to get into it. I mean, you could get into it off either of the two balls on the left-hand side, but
you don't want to attack it from the bottom because
no,
you've got the goalkeeper of the yellow above. You almost have to get above it and kick it down table, but there's not a ball to be able to do that with. So that's a conundrum for him.
No, and I mean he's also got the problem that this ball bottom right is so deep in the pocket that if he goes for that, it's pretty much certain to go in. So he can't play a safety. Well, that's not a bad option there. Decided there wasn't any point going for attack and happy to give away the 2 shots, play the deliberate foul and just try and get one of the yellows tied up at this end of the table.
What an intriguing frame.
Yeah, it's a sort of classical world rules tactical battle. One person's got a couple of pockets covered, the other one's got some balls near there that they can't get to. Although it's not quite as bad for Neil. If the yellow was tight on the red, this would be a real problem, but it's by no means tight, the one that's in the bottom of the table, so plenty of options for potentially getting behind it. Will Neil feel this is the right time to pull the trigger with these 2 shots?
I think he has to. He's tried to land on it. Well, of a fashion.
Yeah, and he gave himself a chance there, playing 2 cushions. He was always going to end up pretty close to it. Just gave himself a bit more margin for error. Would have been perfect if he was slightly straighter on this yellow, but
Yeah.
it's quite a good angle to get the white back up the table, and he's going to get close to the pot even if he doesn't get it in. So as long as he ends up somewhere near the pocket, this is pretty much okay.
If he gets his and gets position, you feel he's just gone favourite.
Oh, that's a great shot.
Fabulous.
So much value to hanging on to the second visit.
I mean, he was dead and buried in this frame until he covered the red at the top of the table by that yellow, just pushing it towards the rail and leaving the yellow above it. And it just shows that was a genius shot, because actually it's kept him in this frame, it's bought him the time he needs, and it's just gone favourite.
Yeah, and it wasn't a shot that everyone would have played. It wasn't probably the most obvious safety shot from where he was.
Brilliant.
Oh, really flying now.
Brilliant.
You would never believe he was the player that was 5-1 down.
No.
Brimful of confidence.
Dead and buried in this frame.
And the nice luxury he's got now is that he's got easy pots on the 2 yellows and he's still got the second visit in hand. So doesn't need to be greedy with the black. Just try and drop behind it. Can set it up if he hasn't got a pot perfectly. Oh,
Heart would have been in mouth just for a second. I think he wanted to leave an angle and he's finished a bit straight. It won't be a problem because he's still carrying those 2 visits, but
yeah, I think he may just have to set the black up from this side now.
Yeah.
He would ideally have liked to punt the white down to this end of the table.
Yeah.
You can't really imagine a problem. Just play the black off the bottom cushion and up towards the top right-hand corner.
I guess the only thing that might catch out a club player is the jaw of the middle bag, is just flirting a bit close to that, but I don't think Neil's going to be anywhere near it.
No, the other thing you don't want to do is rattle it in the jaws of the top right-hand pocket, because it could then run along one of the cushions. You better just to set it up, hit it thick, and just leave yourself a shot on it.
And that's why I was saying that the jaws in the middle pocket, because I think you just hit it kind of so it hits that rail and just and goes up and leaves it. It's easy to overcomplicate these things, isn't it? And try and leave it perfect. As you say, if you go for the double now, then it's easy to rat on. You just have to make sure you leave it. I think he's played that really well. Yeah, great weight. Very well judged. I mean, that.
Yeah, perfect. And the fact he was able to set it up for the middle wasn't clear whether he could hold the white, but that was a safer way of playing it as long as you don't go past the middle pocket.
That'll be a little kick in the ribs and a reminder that I'm still in the frame. I'm still in the match, should I say, is from Neil Raybone. As I say, Declan was firm favourite to win that one and go 6-1. And at 6-1, well, you've got to say that Neil's out of the match. But now at 5-2, a dry break from Declan, well, anything's possible.
Match on table 2, which feels like it's been going on for quite a long time. We saw some of the action from that match in between sessions. Jake Dillon, Newlove 6-3 up against Lackbaden.
So in other games, we already know that Brett Wild's through to the last 8 against Neil Toms with a 7-3 win. Sean Chipperfield has beaten Adam Davis. Adam, a lot of people's favourites to go on, and Sean, great to see him deep in the tournament. Sean Story has beaten Ben Clark 7-4, so he cements his place. We've already seen Tom Cousins beat Stephen Dempsey. As we mentioned a second ago, Jake Dillon, Newlove on the hill. Gaz Hibbert's in the last 8 as well, so it's really shaping up. Sean Chipperfield finds himself up against Brett Wild in the next round. Tom Cousins will play Sean Story. And if I'm not mistaken, I think those two are fairly regular practice partners, come from a similar part of the world. I think they practice quite often together. Gaz Hibbert already awaiting the winner of Jez Graham and Chris Day, and both of those, well, they'll both feel that they've got a real chance there, won't they? No disrespect to either. I mean, I've often said it. I hold both of those players in high regard, but they'll both fancy their chances. It's not, it's not a kind of one that you look at and think, oh, at least I've avoided Tom, or something along those lines. But in their own way, both very, very good players.
Yeah, I think they'll both be happy with that part of the draw. I think they'll be slightly less happy with having to face Gaz Hibbert next. That's going to be a tough task for whoever gets through that one.
And, another player that people probably haven't mentioned, and I don't know whether he's troubled the bookie too much, but Gaz Hibbert, well, we know what he's capable of. Obviously, ex-world champion, but just an all-round great curist. Plays 9-ball, can just virtually adapt to any game. We often talk about Chris Melling, who just flirts between American pool, Chinese, snooker, etc., and 8-ball pool. But Gaz is another one who does exactly the same. And it was only probably a year, 18 months ago, where Gaz was playing in a league game and got back-to-back 147s, which I think is just remarkable. I mean, it's
ridiculous, isn't it? Remarkable.
I just can't get my head around it. I mean, I was never great at snooker, maybe the odd half century, but I mean, to get back-to-back 147s, that's up there with the best players. There's professionals who will have gone their entire career and not done that. Probably never done it in practice. So for Gaz to do it, it just shows how good a curist he really is.
Exceptional. The other story I heard about somebody having 2 147s was Neil Robertson had turned out for the Cambridgeshire 8-ball pool team, where he was playing from the Cambridge Snooker Centre where he practices. I don't know if he regularly played for them or if he was just a ringer for the one match, but apparently he played a frame of snooker, had a 147, then came and lost his match in the county match, and then had another 147. just a brief interlude to lose a frame of pool in between.
I'm a big fan of Gaz. I always have been since I started watching him a number of years ago. and he's always been up there. I love his style. I mean, again, no disrespect to Gaz, but you see this kind of grey-haired chap come to the table, and then it just explodes onto it. He doesn't have a defensive shot in his armoury, unless obviously he's more than capable of having a B game, but he is one of the most attacking players I've ever seen, and I love that about his game.
Yeah, I think, as you say, it's the kind of unexpected. I mean, not just from his sort of demeanour and appearance, but actually, doesn't always seem that flamboyant when you watch him play a shot or two. But it's just very positive the way he goes about it. I mean, as you say, what a curious that, I mean, to get anybody that's making 147s at all at snooker, but to be doing it regularly.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think you then transition to a smaller table and everything would be so simple, but we've seen plenty of snooker players try playing 8-ball or 9-ball and not found it quite as easy.
I know Gaz and Viv often tune into beer productions when they're not playing, and I'm sure Gaz could easily take offence at kind of, referring to him as that, but I mean it in the nice possible way. It's just a fantastic player.
Yeah, what a great job Viv's been doing. She's the tournament director for the GB9 tour that I and a number of us play on, and she's also been doing great work with Matchroom recently, refereeing some of their events.
See her on all the televised events now. Moscone Cup. And, she was down there with her team for the World Championship. Of course, she runs the IPC. I think it's the IPC, the Independent Pool Company, which is referees, team of referees that she runs for all kinds of disciplines.
Yeah, it's often very easy to forget what goes into these events. You see the players, but all the tournament officials and referees that you need to run these events.
Screen is. Someone just put on their black screen.
Sorry for anyone experiencing any technical problems. We're just looking into why the screen has gone black a few times. Oh, lovely cannon there from Neil.
Yeah, the stream's been fairly flawless through the week, but if there is a little glitch, we'll deal with it during the break. So when this frame finishes, they'll restart the computer and see if we can iron that out. Apologies if you are experiencing any technical difficulties and it does distract from your viewing, but yeah, trying to do our best to bring you a flawless stream.
One person not experiencing any technical difficulties is Neil Raybone. He's played 2 beautiful shots to set up this clearance. And he's got himself back into the match now. If he can get this black down, only be 2 frames behind. And there was a moment when it was looking like Declan was going to run away with this, when he was 5-1 up. We weren't really seeing a lot from Neil, but 2 frames now on the board.
You feel there's a kind of shift of the pendulum as well, don't you? That the momentum's just sort of kind of shifted across towards Neil. Okay, that's obviously reflected in the scoreboard, but but suddenly it's just gathering momentum. And I mean, you mentioned earlier some players could just get their head down, and he really, really ground out that frame at 5-1 down, and came back and won it. And you just feel like, and suddenly he felt, I'm banging the game, and it's all credit to Neil and his attitude towards the game. He never gives up. It really does have that never die attitude.
Yeah, so important. You see so many players throw away matches that they actually haven't lost yet, but they've lost it in their heads, whereas the top players never think they're beaten until the end.
Great break. Stunning. Absolutely
Yeah, how
nailed
straight
it.
did he hit that?
Yeah, brilliant. The cue ball just screwed straight back up the table, never any danger. And he timed that to perfection. And look what he's left. Just to try and troubleshoot the fault that we have, someone mentioned that there was a black screen. When the black screen came up, could you still hear the commentary? Or was it, did everything kind of just shut down? Which would just help us troubleshoot the problem. If you could let us know.
And this just shows the advantage. Neil ground out that difficult frame. Now he's had one good clearance already, and looks like he's going to have a simple one. This has all been well deserved. He hung on into this match. It's funny how the pendulum shifts, because a moment ago it just felt like we were watching Declan all the time, and now I can't remember Declan playing a shot for ages. It feels like it's been Neil constantly at the table. Still, if you're on Declan's shoes, you can take the positive. Still 5-3 up, so still favourite for the match, but knows that he's going to be in for a tough game. Slipped slightly out of prime position. Still be fine, but be a bit annoyed. It's so simple. If he just stayed in prime position, he could clear them up one-handed, pretty much.
It kind of just fell out of position from the first shot, getting that cannon on the red that he didn't really want. And as you say, it was a fairly simple finish. He's enough of a good quality player to not let it cause him an issue. You feel there won't be any dramas in this frame, but
no, he's pretty much recovered it now. It's a little bit thinner than he wanted on this one, but he played a good shot there, played it positive, screwing on and off the bottom cushion. Just got to judge this. He's either got to miss the cannon on the middle of these three reds, or if he's going to hit it, he needs to try and hit it full enough to knock it on.
Yeah, I'm not sure he can miss the cannon, can he? It seems almost inevitable. It's kind of that thin that you can't screw around. Well, he obviously could.
So it looks like he's done what he needed to. It'd be an important frame, the next one. It'd be Declan to break, but he's just watched his opponent clear one from his break and one from his own break.
So nice to have Cleve watching us. Saw Cleve down in Milton Keynes a couple of weeks ago, and I'll pose this one to you. He asked a question, and ask your opinion on it, Mark. He said that he's noticed over the years that there's a real difference in the way that a pool player feathers the ball, in the way a snooker player feathers the ball. why do you think there is that difference? I mean, it's yeah.
I think there's a difference for some players. I mean, there's a number of players, we were just talking about Gaz Hibbert, who've come over from a snooker background and have brought the technique with them. I think you see people perhaps a bit less methodical at pool because you can get away with a bit more. Like at snooker, there's a fairly orthodox way of playing where you feather the ball a few times and then you pause at the back, which popularised by Stephen Hendry and a lot of other players over the years. People tend to have a more constant style between them. With pool players, you see a bit more variation. I mean, I wouldn't say it's completely different. I think a lot of players who probably do pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I think what Cleve's probably getting at is, for me, there can be a marked difference. If you look, for example, even in this match, at the way Declan feathers the ball, he's got quite a quick feather to him. A classic snooker player would probably just feather it just slightly longer, and I almost think it's a little bit of it's a bit of a hybrid. And for me, so if you look at someone like Melling or someone like Shane Thompson who has a longer feather, for me it's the difference between a player who has a snooker background and a player that is more a pool background, because I think you touched on it, you can get away with more in snooker. In pool. The cue ball is obviously smaller than the object ball. It's much more reactive than a snooker ball is, or much more reactive than maybe a nine ball is. You can do a lot more with it, so you can have a hybrid. I mean, I've got a friend of mine, I've noticed that he's got a very jerky, stabby cue action, very effective pool player, but he couldn't use that cue action on a snooker table. It just wouldn't be effective. And the difference for him, he's only ever played pool. He's never played snooker. So I think that's the difference between the two. You see the players who've got that classic feather, they probably have come across, like your Gaz Hibbert, who's come across from that snooker background.
The other places are very interesting differences between English and American pool, where particularly the American pool players had a much looser style. A lot of them didn't used to get down on the cue so much and would play with a much looser, more fluid action. And the Europeans turned up and tended to play more from a snooker background and brought a much more methodical approach to it. I think that's kind of caught on now. If you look at most top 9-ball players, far more of them are now doing this kind of snooker approach to it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good analogy, because if you look at someone like Efren Reyes, he's got that really loopy action. It almost looks like he's sawing a piece of wood. His arm rotates around, and they do that to kind of generate the spin on the ball. And then, of course, the players came into the Mosconi Cup like Steve Davis and people like that. And for me, they were always more accurate at potting, because they have that snooker background, and there's a lot less that can go wrong in the mechanics of a snooker shot with that typical backwards and forwards pendulum motion than this rotating motion that you see from, as I say, players like Efren Reyes, Shane Van Boning. For me, there's more can go wrong, because you've added that extra element of that the cue coming up and down as well as going backwards and forwards, and you have to be more accurate in your point of contact. But it's interesting, as you say. Then there's players like Jason Shaw who have gone across and adapted, and they've got a much more. It's kind of a cross between. It's a more classic cue action without that loop, but they still kind of play the classic finger over the top of the cue American style. So I think it's kind of adapting, isn't it?
I do love watching some of the footage of particularly the older American players. I mean, like Earl Strickland, he still kind of does it, but looking at footage of him from 20 years ago in the Mosconi, it's such a sort of fluid style.
Yeah.
Such a contrast playing, teams including Jimmy White, Steve Davis, those kind of guys were playing such an orthodox snooker style at the time.
Yeah.
The Americans are so loose. And the shots they were going for as well, like the snooker guys inevitably try and stun everything in, whereas the American pool guys were letting everything run off 3 cushions with a load of side.
Yeah.
What it's very important to do on these very fast tournament cloths is to still get through the ball properly. A lot of club players transitioning from playing in their local club to playing in these events get a bit tentative because the cloth is so fast, and then you end up not putting a proper stroke on the ball. You kind of jab at it. Like these guys, you can see are getting properly through. Even if you're playing the shot slowly, you've still got to get the cue all the way through the ball.
And that was stereotypical of what I was talking about of the way Declan cues the ball. It's just a couple of tiny feathers before his backswing, and much more a snooker player. I just don't think would get away with that.
The interesting ones are the handful of players, Marco Fu in particular, that doesn't really do any feathering, just kind of points the cue. And
yeah.
I mean, you can try doing it. You can sort of see how it works, but I think you talk yourself out of it after a while. For some shots, you're like, oh, this doesn't matter. You can still do it. But like some shots, it's just kind of nice to sight yourself. Like if it's not a simple straight shot, you just want to take a bit longer to settle yourself on it.
And Declan stops the rock, cuts off that comeback from Neil, and he puts himself on the hill. He's 6-4. Just about to get underway in their quarter-finals on table 19 and table 20. Brett Wild against Sean Chipperfield, Sean Story against Tom Cousins. So those quarters just getting underway.
I think the second of those could be an interesting match. Sean against Tom. Like Tom, I wouldn't say he's struggled. I mean, he looks like he's playing okay, but he's been taken very close by a lot of people this weekend. Sean looks to be in pretty good form. I think that could go pretty close.
And you wonder who's going to be on this table next. I mean, at the moment, obviously, Declan's favourite to win this match, given the scoreline. Jake Dylan Newlove will await the winner of that. You would think that they might give Gaz Hibbert his first airing on the TV table against the winner of Jez Graham and Chris Day, but that game's still at 3-1. It's got some mileage left in it. They may not want to wait until the conclusion of that. They might just herd on the next game, which means we'll see the winner of this game playing Jake Dylan Newlove. We'll see what the organisers have in store for us.
Yeah, it's a pretty tight schedule, quarter to 8 already, the quarter-final starting. We're looking to play to a winner tonight. So in the interest of any of us getting some sleep, they might be keen to keep the matches coming. We'll update you on that as soon as we've got news of who the next one's going to be.
I mean, according to the schedule, the first two quarter-finals should have got underway, I think, around 6:30. So we are probably about an hour behind schedule. Could make for a late night.
Mind you, in all fairness, given the number of players in this tournament, it's been a sterling effort to get through as many matches as we have. This is a big field. Sort of general happiness around the place. Like, I've seen a number of people who've lost have still said, well, still nice to be here and just get back to playing some competitive pool. I think a couple of seasons ago you might have got a different reaction. People get a bit jaded when they're playing all the time, but right now people just want to see their friends again and get back into the competitive arena. So last chance saloon for Neil Raybone. Knows that any miss could potentially be his last. He's gone a little bit astray on the left-hand side of the table. Didn't quite get that last cannon right, so still got the one ball tied up.
That's not what he was looking for either. I think a little less angle. He might have been able to manoeuvre the cue ball across to try and knock out the yellow, but this is way too much angle.
Yeah, and the position of the Reds mean he can't even play up and down off the bottom cushion. Not that that would have been easy anyway, but I think he's just going to have to...
Another 4 or 5 inches across to the right, and he was fine, but yeah, it's
one of these ones he wants to get it done in this visit, but I mean, really, I think he's just going to have to be patient. mean, the trouble is, obviously a shot just to cover the top left-hand corner pocket, but the white's going to be an open play, and Declan's going to have access to at least one of the reds, you would feel.
I think again, knowing Neil, you can kind of rely on him to play the right shot. It's, some players here would just have a heave and try and get lucky. I don't think we're going to see any such thing.
No, I mean, there isn't. However adventurous you're feeling, there really isn't a route into the yellow on the left-hand side from where he is.
Well, he did take that chance and try and get that better angle to get across to the yellow, but ultimately that may well cost him this frame.
Yeah, the damage was done 2 shots ago when he didn't get good position with the yellow the first time, and then it's a much more difficult version of it he's just tried. Well, that's as good as he could do from that position. Still gives himself a sporting chance at least of coming back to the table.
Yeah. Well, kind of a little bit of the feeling of deja vu. It's, we were here a few frames ago when he was fighting to get a hold in the frame, but this is a very different proposition. Only having 2 balls left on the table, it gives all of that ammunition. To apologise to the players. They're just sorting out that light across the table. Last thing you want is the sun poking through the curtains to leave that.
Yeah, typical poor play. It's a glorious sunny day outside. People are complaining that the curtain's been open.
Yeah.
Not that you're going to have seen much of it, I imagine, having been sat here all day, but it really is a glorious day outside. It's very different from yesterday.
No, I've been a mushroom all day today. The only daylight I saw was getting into the car this morning. Yeah, I had a feeling that Declan was... It just felt like, I need to take these out. I need to get them done now. Yeah. Learning his lesson from the previous time when he kind of dallied a little.
Yeah, this was quite a nice position. He had quite a few balls, so there was always a plan A, B and C if he didn't get it the first time.
Yeah. Oh, this has gone wrong. This has gone horribly wrong. Wow. That I did not expect. I was just about to start administering last rites for Neil, and suddenly he's very much back in the game.
I think some players will be administering last rites to their queue at this point. That's a very annoying position to have ended up.
I don't think he can believe what he's done. Ultimately, no amount of head shaking is going to change the situation. He has to find a. He needs to find a shot here. Otherwise, this is game back on again.
I mean, he's going to have to play towards the left-hand side cushion, surely, and just try and get the white over somewhere in the bottom right-hand quadrant of the table, ideally behind one of those balls. It's not quite a touching ball, so he's going to have to hit this red.
Shot.
Oh no, he's done it again.
Or has he? Can he get through? Pretty sure he can.
Oh, what a cracking shot. That was nowhere near as easy as it looked.
Crazy. Wow. I say the camera angle just looks like he's got no chance, but actually it's not a million miles away. He clearly can't see the potting angle, but can he turn the ball over?
I think he's just too close to the flat.
Yeah, he's too close.
Yeah, you can turn the ball over quite a lot, but I think you'd have
Yeah.
to swerve. I mean, he may choose to kind of swerve around this because it's a sort of natural-ish shot.
That was such a great shot. I mean, he's played it with check side. Well, he's played it with the pace as well to check the ball up. And
that last shot was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at that and think, oh, it's just a straight-in shot, but you could have 20 goes at that and
Yeah.
not make.
Yeah. Very unlucky to finish here. Well, he's going to have to pull out another piece of magic. Well, has he covered the angle to the ball on the rail? If he has, then he's given Neil something to think about. Well, possibly covered the potting angle
Yeah, I
to
think
plant
he
up
has.
the rail.
Yeah, I think he has. That's actually a pretty good outcome.
Yeah. So that really does give Neil something to think about, because it's not a formality to get on that yellow. He may just have to. I think he's just going to take his medicine and drop this in, and yeah, give himself the double. Well, he's landed plumb as well, hasn't he?
It's tight, isn't it? He just make that without double kissing.
Yeah, I think he's all right. I think he's okay. It's one of those he's got a punch anyway. Yeah.
So this black ball to stay in the match. Declan had the frame at his mercy at one point.
If Neil can find a way to get this to heel, it's the pressure's going to be so much on Declan. He'll know that this should have been done and dusted. He should have been off into the quarterfinals already. Great pot.
Quality composure from Neil Raybone.
Yeah.
Back tight against
Pressure. The pressure on that ball. Fabulous. Well, Declan still has the game at his mercy. He's got the break in the next, but the pressure's now firmly on his shoulders. I mean, knowing that he's just made that big mistake, and how often do we see the pool gods punish you by going dry or in off or something horrible happening? Well, you hope for Declan's sake that they just come out lovely, but Neil will be hoping for any kind of chance.
What would he give for a ball off the break and a nice layout here?
Oh, nearly lost the cue ball off the table. You saw it bounce up in the air. Luckily for him, it found the rail. And sometimes it can find the top edge of the rail and bounce off the table, but it kind of hit the bumper of the cushion. It's just again.
Yeah, ball off the table is very, very costly at this level.
How has that stayed on the table?
You can see he just really wanted it. He put that extra bit into it. Just cued down on it that little bit.
Awkward though. An awkward leave.
Yeah, he never had control of that white, so he
No.
can hardly complain where it's landed.
No.
Can you see the red in the middle of the table? Can you see the potting angle to pot it into the left centre?
Yeah, pretty sure he can. But, got a couple of issues still to contend with. Or maybe he can't. He's having to play a safety.
So he's left an open table, potted reds off the break and nominated yellows. Neil can go for either colour still.
So Neil would have only hoped for a chance in this frame. Okay, it's just to get to the table is a bonus. So he can wrestle some kind of control of this frame. In all honesty, if he can find a way to win this frame, he becomes a firm favourite for the match, because he's going to be breaking in the last, and he'll feel like he's got a get out of jail free card.
Massively so. Yeah, I was wondering about this plant he's just looking at. It looked like that might well be, if the cue ball was higher up the table, it would definitely be possible to make it. I mean, can he make it from this angle?
Yeah, looks very makeable, doesn't it? Well, I mean, it's not
I think the
a
problem is
formality, but
yeah, I think the problem is because the balls are so close, it's kind of turned it into a reverse plant. So he actually really wants to hit the left-hand side of the yellow as we look at it now, and he can't get to that part. Is there just enough space between them to be able to change this angle? Yes, there is.
now then,
I think he missed a trick there, Declan. Leaving an open table on that plant was a bit careless. He
Yeah.
should have made sure he didn't leave Neil a shot at that. Because he pushed the cue ball through. He could have left the cue ball shorter there and he wouldn't have left a shot on that. It's the kind of shot you don't really think about because it's only in that very specific situation after the break in world rules where you can play what's effectively a free ball. You can hit red or yellow. It's not a very common position to be in. Do we think he can get through the gap of the two yellows to hit that
he
right?
can definitely. I noticed it from the other camera angle a second ago. He can definitely get through the gap, but it's what he can do with the cue ball afterwards. I was just wondering if that was the right shot, but of course, limited options for position with the yellow just below.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine he'd want to play it now. I was just wondering if he could play it last and get a position on the black, or if he's going to have to try and drop. There's a few options for how to get onto it. It would also be much easier if you can just play for the gap. So he seems to be looking at the side cushion. It's almost as though he feels he can't get through. The three at this end of the table aren't going to pose any problem. It's all about that last red.
He's giving it another look. He feels like he thinks he has to move it, but I could have sworn that when we saw from the other side, I only got a glance at it, but it seemed like it was on. But the way he's eyeing up that side cushion, you have to assume that he.
I mean, if it goes top right, it would be all right, but the way he's eyeing it up is as though he thinks he's going to have to bump it, which is quite a lot could go wrong with that.
Well, we're going to find out because he's going to go after it now. I think this is. I mean, he has to, but it's low percentage for me. Problem was he had very limited options. If he could have got through to nudge the red out, he had to land on it because there's not a lot of options down table.
Yeah, I mean that was a very high degree of difficulty. Black was always in the way. There was a really narrow path to get through. You felt like maybe it'd been better just to stay at the bottom of the table for another shot or two. I mean, I know neither of those afford perfect position, but that was just such a difficult shot.
Yeah.
And no real guarantee of getting position, even if he made the cannon.
So taking the tactical option now, just covering a bag, but as he left a gap below the red, can we see from the overhead whether the yellow will pass? Maybe you can squeeze it and move it. Well, it's close.
Yeah, I think you could probably squeeze a ball through there. These pockets are surprisingly hard to cover. They don't never feel that big when you're playing on them, but actually when you try and cover one, you realise you very often leave a gap.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's looking at now. And the thing about this shot is the red may well squeeze up table and disturb those two yellows. He's going to have to play it with pace.
Oh, this could be bad if he's left a path through now.
I
I think the difference here is when you're this close, you can turn the ball over with some left-hand side. Although, I mean, the point you were making before, it's not that easy to get the cue ball out. Although I think if you can just turn this over with a bit of side and cannon into the yellow that's closest, then he'll leave a shot at the red. Well, he's never liked it, has he? He didn't like it before.
No,
And he just, I mean, this is a much easier version than from where he was looking at it previously.
yeah.
You couldn't ask for have it better because you can judge the side much closer, much easier when it's closer like this. I'm sure with enough left-hand side you could make this. If anything, he's screwed back a bit further. He almost just wanted to cannon straight into that yellow and leave a bit of angle on this red. To cue over the ball's a bit awkward.
Hamper queuing, you can see him look up and blow his cheeks out. I mean, this is...
I don't think there's much point thinking about position. I think you just got to focus on the job in hand and then deal with the next red afterwards.
Nasty. I mean, these aren't gimme shots at the best of times, but when you've got to lift the butt of the cue, horrible.
Kind of the worst angle as well for position.
Yeah.
It's not quite enough to get nicely on and off the cushion, but it's too much just to drop it in. I think he is just going to have to. I don't think you want to get over clever with this. I think just passing the ball is the key thing.
What a horrible shot to have to take on.
Oh, that's a phenomenal pot. He has hit that so smoothly.
Brilliant. They make those shots look so easy at this level. Crazy.
I mean, that's the kind of shot you can so easily pop a little bit of side on, which swerves it when you're keying down, and you can miss that by a ball's width or more.
I mean, for a club player, you're probably getting that 1 in 10, maybe.
I think this position's all right, although this is quite an awkward shot. The white's naturally coming twice across the table. I think actually he can play into the gap for the black. I mean, it's not an easy shot, obviously, but it's...
Yeah, I think he's got the kind of angle that the middle bag's not in contention. He comes high of the middle bag naturally, so he can just focus on the pot. He can't disregard the positional side of things. He has to weight the cue ball accurately because there is still traffic at the top of the table, so it's not a formality, but
yeah, I think
the line is
the yellow to the right of the black could loom quite large if he doesn't judge it right.
Yeah, you called it.
I think ideally he just wanted to play that with a bit of running side, but
it felt like it needed a bit of side, but
I mean, it's easy to be critical. It was by no means a gimme pot, so he did have to focus on the pot. But
yeah,
very annoying having dispatched those last two reds to be in this position.
And a horrible situation to be in because Declan's got all 7 of his pawns in play, and if you leave that black on the table, well, he can just tie you up in knots.
Yes, it's going to be a painful last 10 minutes to the match if he's missing this black.
Yeah.
I don't even think he's quite got the angle to treble it into. I mean, you're inevitably having to look at pretty outlandish shots at this point. It's not like there's a simple one.
That's exactly what he's looking at. It's a treble.
I think the yellow above the black is slightly in the way. I think he's going to come too low if he misses the yellow above it.
I think he kind of knows it as well. You can see him sort of looking off into the distance, ruining his luck as he walked around the table. But
I mean, you could almost consider coming along the line of the bulk line off the yellow that's above the black. But I mean, you're gonna hit the left-hand side cushion. It's not quite. You're going to get near the pocket, but not quite in it if you hit that. Basically, a number of options, none of which are very good. Not even really any kind of hit and hope shot because you're just going to clatter into one of the yellows. It's going to be quite hard to fluke it. think anything short of potting it is going to leave him in some bother.
Yeah.
I think really you've got to try and give yourself a chance at a pot and give yourself a chance of getting lucky. Maybe it goes safe or creates some awkward situation.
Yeah. It's one of those, if he can't get it in the pocket, just in the path of a couple of yellows, just to give Declan something to think about, but it just seems a forlorn hope from here. Well, he's pushed a couple of yellows together, but I think Declan's got all the time in the world now. I think we're just looking for something to cause a problem, because we can just punt one of these yellows out into the open, leave Neil tied up.
Yeah, that's a good shot. The one thing he didn't want to do was leave a one cushion escape onto the black. Neil could have knocked it near the pocket. You see some players that would have just bumped one of those out, would have kind of left the white an inch or two further to the right, which would have left a chance. But from here, it's
there's not even any deliberate foul options. Just I mean, the thing I could possibly think of is to try and pot the yellow to bottom left and leave a. I mean,
getting out of the snooker doesn't seem to afford much.
No, I'm just thinking if he pots the yellow to bottom left and then kind of leaves the cue ball touching the yellow to the side of it, then it just wastes Declan's first shot, and then he's still got the two balls on the bulk line to contend with. It's the only kind of headache I can imagine that you can give him. Yeah,
I think unfortunately for him, I think he's too straight to do that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
If he could just nestle behind, pot it and nestle behind. I mean, there is the two cushion shot that he's looking at into the black. It's a really difficult shot to pick out though when you're as close to the first cushion as this. It's the kind of shot you can miss by several inches. I mean, if he makes contact with obviously with the cushion and the black, he might punt it towards the pocket.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a very good effort.
That is a great effort, and unfortunately for him, the only balls that were a problem have now opened up. And
yeah, I mean, he was less than half an inch away from potting that, and in the end, he's done the worst possible thing. I mean, he couldn't have done more than that, but he's opened the balls up and given the two shots away. So now, absolutely lovely position for Declan. Two shots, all the balls in the open.
Yeah, that was close, very close. Fine margins, very fine margins. It's been a great comeback from Neil, and you almost felt there were just spells during the last couple of frames where, you know, if you were laying a book on it, he almost went favourite just for a split second. You know, from being 5-1 behind and then was it 6-3? I mean, it kind of felt that he was, you know, he probably a 8-1, 10-1 underdog at some point, and then during that last frame, he just seemed to. So there were moments where you could argue that he was favourite, but ultimately it's just that one positional shot to get on the black. It was difficult, but those are the chances you need to take at this level, and feels like it's going to cost him the frame. I mean, we said this in the last frame, and Declan made a really elementary mistake, but you can't see anything going wrong here.
No, he left himself a nice angle to play the twice across.
Yeah.
If he didn't have the two shots, this would be a bit of a twitchy one. But with the two, he knows in or over will suffice.
Yeah.
And the fact that the yellow on the bulk line is so close to the black makes it very easy to get position on the black when he's dispatched the bottom one.
Even easier now. So probably a little bit more twitchy than it needed to be for Declan. There were times in that when it just looked like it was going to be straightforward for him, but he would have felt the pressure quite a number of times, and that's all credit to Neil Raybone and his persistence and you know, that kind of grittiness that he possesses in his game, that never die attitude. But Neil will bow out of the event. I think he's still in the Jason Owen Open, so he's still got a kind of dog's life in that one. But it's Declan Brennan that's going to go on to the quarterfinals. Do we know what's up next? Well, it's going to be one of those two games that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those. You can see 2 quarterfinals already underway. Sean Chipperfield 4-2 against Brett Wild, and Sean Story 3-1 up against Tom Cousins.
I'll have a quick look to see if we can ascertain. So, well, the Jez Graham's actually 6-2 up against Chris Days. So, Jez looks like he's going to get into the quarterfinals. If they want to get a game underway now, then it's going to be Declan Brennan against Jake Dillon Newlove. If they want to wait a while until the Jez Graham game finishes, it's going to be Gareth Hibbert against potentially, well, looks likely to be Jez Graham, 6-2 up. We don't know. We'll let you know as soon as we do. We'll be back live with the action as soon as the players are ready. Keep an eye out for that notification. We're going to reset things here, and we'll see you all again shortly.